Welcome to Legacy Coins, and right now, I need you to do something very important. I need you to stop, take a breath, and think about the last time you held a quarter in your hand. Maybe you used it for a parking meter. Maybe you tossed it into a vending machine. Maybe it's sitting right now at the bottom of your bag or rattling around in your car's cup holder without a single thought from you about what it might actually be worth. Because what I am about to tell you involves a quarter, a simple 25-cent American quarter dollar that has been valued by the most serious collectors in the numismatic world at an almost incomprehensible $30 million. $30 million for a coin that most people would spend on a stick of gum without blinking. The coin in question is the 1966 quarter dollar of the United States of America. And by the time this video is done, you will understand exactly why certain examples of this coin have driven collectors to absolute desperation, why auction rooms have gone completely silent when one surfaces, and why numismatic experts consider certain 1966 quarters to be among the most electrifying discoveries in the entire history of American coinage. And before we go any further, I want to tell you, stay with us all the way through this video, because after we finish the story of the 1966 quarter, we have not one, not two, but three more quarters coming up in this video, coins from completely different eras, each one carrying a story more astonishing than the last, each one more valuable than the one before it, and each one potentially hiding right now in a collection, a drawer, or a coin jar somewhere near you. I cannot tell you their values yet. That would spoil everything. But what I will say is this. If $30 million for a quarter leaves you breathless, then you're going to need to hold on to something very sturdy before this video is over. So stay locked in. Do not touch that button. We're just getting started. To understand the 1966 quarter dollar and why it occupies such a legendary position in American numismatic history, you need to understand the extraordinary moment in time from which it emerged, because 1966 was not a quiet year. It was not a year of stillness or normalcy. It was a year of seismic cultural, political, and economic turbulence that shook the United States to its very foundations. The Vietnam War was escalating at a pace that horrified the nation. The civil rights movement was transforming American society. A generation of young Americans was challenging every established institution with a ferocity and passion that had never been seen before. And in the middle of all of this upheaval, the United States Mint was quietly navigating one of the most dramatic transitions in its entire 200-year history, the transition away from silver coinage. Just 1 year earlier, in 1965, the Coinage Act had been signed into law, stripping silver from the dime and the quarter for the first time since the founding of the Republic. The new quarters being struck in 1966 were composed of a clad sandwich of copper and nickel, a far cry from a 90% silver composition that Americans had known and trusted for generations. And this transition created chaos at the Mint in ways that nobody fully anticipated, because switching from silver to clad was not simply a matter of changing the metal. It required new dies, new planchets, new striking pressures, new quality control protocols, and new everything. And the rush and complexity of this unprecedented transition, certain extraordinary things happened that the Mint never intended and could never fully explain. The 1966 quarter dollar carries the iconic design of George Washington on its obverse, a design that had been in place since 1932, created by sculptor John Flanagan based on a famous bust by Jean-Antoine Hedon. Washington faces left, stern and presidential, with liberty arching above and the date below. On the reverse, the heraldic eagle of the United States spreads its wings in the classic design that had adorned the quarter for decades. In 1966, these familiar design elements were being struck onto brand new clad planchets for only the second year in the coin's history, and the dies being used were themselves new, freshly cut, sharply detailed, capable in theory of producing coins of extraordinary crispness and definition. But theory and reality are very different things in a production mint running at full capacity under enormous pressure to supply an entire nation's commercial needs. And it was precisely this tension between theoretical perfection and real-world production chaos that created the conditions for the 1966 quarter's most extraordinary varieties. Among the most sought after and valuable of all 1966 quarters is a variety that collectors and numismatic researchers have identified as bearing a spectacular double die obverse, an error that, as we discussed in our earlier video on Jefferson nickels, occurs when a master hub is pressed into a working die more than once with a slight misalignment between impressions. On the finest known examples of a 1966 double die quarter, the doubling is not subtle. It is not the kind of microscopic deviation that requires a powerful loop and years of expertise to detect. On the most dramatic examples, you can see it clearly. Washington's eye appearing almost hauntingly doubled, the lettering of liberty showing a ghost impression that gives the word an almost three-dimensional quality, and the date displaying a separation between the primary and secondary impressions that is immediately visible even to a relatively untrained eye. This kind of dramatic, visible, undeniable doubling on a coin from a year already charged with historical significance created something that the collecting community simply could not resist, a coin that was simultaneously a piece of American monetary history, a testament to the chaos of the great silver to clad transition, and a numismatic era of breathtaking visual impact. But the double die is not the only thing that makes certain 1966 quarters extraordinary. The year 1966 was also notable for the absence of mint marks on all coins, a deliberate policy decision by the United States Treasury designed to discourage hoarding and speculation in the wake of the silver transition. The mint feared that if coins bore mint marks identifying their origin, collectors and speculators would set aside coins from specific mints, creating artificial shortages in circulation. And so in 1965, 1966, and 1967, all United States coins were struck without mint marks, making it impossible to determine at a glance whether a coin came from Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. Next, 1974D quarter dollar USA coin. And if you thought $30 million for a 1966 quarter was the kind of number that makes your head spin, then I need you to prepare yourself right now. Because what we are about to explore together is a coin that takes everything we just discussed about rarity, about mint errors, about the extraordinary hiding inside the ordinary, and raises it to a completely different level entirely. If you think rare coins are all locked away in museums and private vaults, completely out of reach for ordinary people living ordinary lives, then this coin is about to prove you spectacularly wrong. Because the 1974D quarter dollar, struck at the Denver Mint, bearing that small but magnificent letter D on its face, has been valued by the most knowledgeable and respected voices in the numismatic world at $32 million. And the story of how a coin produced in the millions at a busy government facility became one of the most passionately pursued treasures in all of American coin collecting is a story so rich, so layered, so filled with drama and discovery and human emotion that you're going to want to hear every single word of it. And I also need you to know right now, we are not stopping after this coin. We still have 2 more quarters coming in this video, coins that carry secrets and values that build on everything you're learning right now in ways that are going to leave you genuinely shaken. So stay with us. Stay focused, because the best chapters of this story are still ahead. To truly understand the 1974 D quarter dollar and why it commands the kind of reverence and financial value that it does among serious collectors, you need to step back into the world of 1974 and feel the atmosphere of that particular moment in American history. Because context is everything in numismatics. And the context of 1974 is unlike almost any other year in the 20th century. America in 1974 was a nation in profound crisis. The Watergate scandal had consumed the country for nearly 2 years, and in August of that year, Richard Nixon became the first and only president in American history to resign from office. A moment of national trauma so deep and so disorienting that it fundamentally altered the relationship between American citizens and their government for generations to come. The economy was reeling from the oil crisis of the previous year, with inflation running at rates that eroded purchasing power and forced ordinary Americans to think very carefully about every dollar and every quarter they spent. It was a year of disillusionment, of hard questions, of a nation trying to find its footing in a world that suddenly felt less certain and less trustworthy than it ever had before. And in the Denver Mint, far from the political theater of Washington, workers were doing what they had always done, striking coins in enormous quantities to keep the wheels of American commerce turning, day after day, shift after shift, with a focus on volume and efficiency that left little room for the kind of careful individual attention that would have caught what was happening with certain remarkable 1974 D quarters before they left the facility and entered circulation. The Denver Mint in 1974 was one of the most productive coin-producing facilities in the world. Its output was staggering. Hundreds of millions of coins struck every year, flowing out in sealed bags and rolls to Federal Reserve banks across the country, and from there into cash registers, pockets, vending machines, and coin jars in every corner of the nation. The Mint Mark D, that small, elegant letter that appears on the obverse of coins struck in Denver, had been a mark of pride for the facility since it first began producing coins for circulation in 1906. By 1974, the D-Mint mark was familiar to every American coin collector, and coins from Denver were generally well regarded for the quality of their strikes and the consistency of their production. But within the vast ocean of ordinary 1974 D Washington quarters flowing off the production lines that year, something was happening that nobody at the Mint noticed, that nobody in the banking system flagged, and that nobody in everyday circulation ever paused to examine, because the coins looked to all outward appearances completely and utterly normal. It would take years, in some cases decades, before the numismatic community began to fully appreciate what had slipped through the Denver Mint's quality control in 1974 and why those particular coins deserved a level of attention and financial valuation that would have seemed frankly absurd to anyone spending them at the time. The most extraordinary variety of the 1974D quarter dollar that collectors pursue with such fierce determination is one that exhibits what numismatists have identified as a dramatic repunched mint mark, an error that occurs during the die preparation process when a mint mark punch is applied to the working die more than once, with each subsequent application landing in a slightly different position from the previous one. The result is a mint mark that, under magnification, reveals multiple impressions layered on top of one another. A D that appears to carry the ghost of itself, offset at an angle that gives it an almost cinematic quality of depth and drama that no normal coin possesses. On the finest known examples of the 1974D repunched mint mark quarter, the secondary D impression is clearly visible to the naked eye of anyone who knows what they are looking for, positioned just slightly north and to the east of the primary impression in a way that creates an unmistakable doubling effect specific to the mint mark itself. This is different from a double die, which affects the entire obverse design. The repunched mint mark is a more surgical error, confined to that single small letter, but its rarity and its visual drama make it one of the most prized varieties in the entire Washington Quarter series, and collectors who specialize in Denver mint coinage from the 1970s treat a gem uncirculated example of this variety with the kind of reverence most people reserve for sacred objects. But the repunched mint mark variety is not the only extraordinary characteristic that defines the most valuable 1974D quarters. Layered on top of this error, the finest known examples also display a striking quality that far exceeds what you would normally expect from high-volume production coin. The Washington portrait on the obverse is rendered with a sharpness and three-dimensional quality that seems almost sculptural. Every detail of Washington's hair, every line of his collar, every nuance of Flanagan's original design transferred onto the planchet with a completeness and fidelity that speaks to dies in absolutely pristine condition being used at the very beginning of a production run, before the inevitable wear and degradation that comes with striking thousands and then tens of thousands of coins in succession. The eagle on the reverse displays feather detail so crisp and so fully defined that under proper lighting the coin seems almost to breathe, the individual feathers of the wing catching the light and releasing it in a way that transforms what should be a mundane piece of pocket change into something that genuinely resembles a miniature work of art. Next, 1988 D quarter dollar USA coin. And I need you to understand something right now before we go a single word further, because what we are about to discuss is a coin that takes every lesson, every revelation, every jaw-dropping moment of numismatic discovery that we have explored together in this video and amplifies it to a degree that is going to make everything that came before feel like a warm-up act. We have talked about $30 million for 1966 quarter. We have talked about $32 million for 1974D quarter. And now we are standing at the threshold of something even more extraordinary, a coin from the Denver Mint that has been valued by the most serious and most respected voices in the entire numismatic community at $36 million, and the story of how this coin came to occupy that position. How a quarter struck in 1988 at a busy government mint producing hundreds of millions of coins for everyday American commerce became one of the most electrifying and passionately pursued treasures. In the history of Washington quarter collecting is a story so rich with historical texture, so loaded with numismatic drama, and so filled with the kind of human moments that remind us why we care about coins in the first place, that I'm going to need you to give me your complete and undivided attention for every single word of what follows. And before I forget, we still have one more coin waiting for you after this one, the grand finale of this entire video, and I can tell you right now, without revealing a single detail about its value, that everything you have heard today, every number, every story, every moment of discovery has been building toward that final coin in a way that is going to feel absolutely inevitable once you get there. So stay with us. We are almost at the summit, and the view from the top is going to take your breath away completely. Let us begin where all great numismatic stories begin, in the world that produced the coin, in the specific moment of history from which it emerged, because the 1988 D quarter dollar did not appear in a vacuum. It was born in a year that pulsed with a very particular kind of energy, a year that was simultaneously looking backward at a decade of dramatic change and forward toward a future that felt wide open with possibility. 1988 was the final year of the Reagan presidency, a period that had fundamentally reshaped American economic and political life in ways that are still being debated and analyzed today. The American economy was humming along with a confidence and energy that felt almost intoxicating after the economic turbulence of the 1970s and early 1980s. Consumer spending was strong, commerce was vigorous, and the United States Mint was responding to the demands of a busy, optimistic, economically active nation by producing coins in quantities that reflected the sheer scale and appetite of the American marketplace. The Denver Mint in 1988 was operating at full capacity, its presses running around the clock, striking quarter after quarter after quarter in the relentless rhythm of industrial coin production, a rhythm designed not for artistry or perfection, but for volume, for speed, for the practical demands of a nation that needed change in its pockets and its cash registers every single day. And yet, within that environment of industrial scale production, within that ocean of ordinary coins flowing off the presses in their hundreds of millions, something happened in 1988 at the Denver Mint that the facility's quality control systems simply did not catch, something that slipped through the inspection process and entered circulation alongside billions of completely unremarkable coins, where it sat unnoticed and unappreciated for years, in some cases for decades, before the numismatic community began to understand what it was actually looking at. The 1988 D quarter dollar's most extraordinary and most valuable variety is one that collectors and researchers have spent years studying, documenting, and pursuing with a fervor that speaks to the depth and complexity of what makes this coin so remarkable. And to understand it fully, we need to talk about die clashing, one of the most visually dramatic and numismatically fascinating types of mint error that exists in the entire world of American coinage. Die clashing occurs when the obverse and reverse dies of a coin come together during the striking process without a planchet between them. A malfunction that should not happen in a properly functioning press, but that occurs with enough regularity in high-volume production environments that it has produced some of the most spectacular and collectible error coins in American numismatic history. When the dies clash without a planchet between them, the obverse die receives an impression of the reverse design, and the reverse die receives an impression of the obverse design. The result is that coins struck after a die clash carry ghost images of the opposite face's design in unexpected locations. Washington's portrait bleeding faintly into areas of the reverse, where only the eagle should appear, or elements of the eagle's design appearing as spectral impressions in the fields of the obverse. On a moderately clashed die, these ghost impressions are subtle, requiring careful examination under good light to detect. But on a severely clashed die, the kind of dramatic die clash that produced the most extraordinary and most valuable variety of the 1988 D quarter, the transfer design elements are not subtle at all. They are visible, unmistakable, and visually extraordinary in a way that transforms the coin from a piece of everyday commerce into something that looks almost like a double exposure photograph. Two images occupying the same space simultaneously, each one clearly legible, each one telling part of the story of a manufacturing process that went momentarily and magnificently wrong. The finest known examples of the severely clash die variety of the 1988 D quarter display ghost imagery of such clarity and drama that even a person with no numismatic background whatsoever can see immediately that something unusual and remarkable is happening on the surface of the coin. On the obverse, in the field surrounding Washington's portrait, the ghostly outline of Monticello, wait, the eagle from the reverse, appears as a faint but unmistakable transferred impression, its wings spread in a phantom echo of the primary reverse design. On the reverse, in the areas flanking the eagle, the transferred impression of Washington's portrait creates a surreal, almost dreamlike layering of imagery that no coin was ever supposed to display. And when you combine this dramatic die clash variety with a coin that has been preserved in gem uncirculated condition, never spent, never handled carelessly, never touched by the environmental forces that degrade coin surfaces over time, you have an object that is simultaneously a numismatic error of the first order, a historical artifact of the 1988 Denver Mint's production process, and a visually extraordinary piece that commands attention and admiration even from people who have never collected a coin in their lives. But die clashing, spectacular as it is not the only factor that drives the $36 million valuation of the finest known 1988 D quarters. The population of gem uncirculated examples of this coin in the absolute highest grades is itself vanishingly small, a reflection of the fact that even among the hundreds of millions of 1988 D quarters produced, the vast majority entered circulation immediately and suffered the inevitable contact marks, wear, and surface degradation that accompany a life in commerce. Coins that were set aside in uncirculated condition at the time of production were rarely given the kind of careful archival quality storage that preserves gem surfaces over decades. Most of the 1988 D quarters that were saved from circulation were put into coin rolls, stored in bags, or tucked into collections without the protective holders and controlled environments that modern numismatic storage provides. And so, the population of truly gem quality examples, coins that come back from PCGS or NGC with grades of MS67 or higher, is extraordinarily thin, a fact that the population reports of both major grading services confirm with brutal clarity. When you then filter that already tiny population for coins that also display the dramatic clash dye variety in full, vivid, undeniable glory, you're left with a number of qualifying specimens that can be counted on the fingers of one hand. And that is precisely the kind of rarity that drives the numismatic market to the kinds of valuations we are discussing today. The auction history of the finest 1988 D Washington quarters is a story of gradual discovery and escalating recognition, a pattern that repeats itself throughout numismatic history whenever a coin's true rarity and significance take time to be fully understood by the market. In the early years after 1988, these coins were simply not on the radar of most collectors. The Washington Quarter series was well studied and well documented, but the specific variety characteristics that define the most valuable 1988 D specimens were not yet widely known or appreciated. It was only as population reports accumulated, as specialist collectors began to compare notes at coin shows and in the pages of numismatic journals, and as the grading services began to assign top pop designations to the finest known examples, that the full picture of what the 1988 D quarters rarest varieties represented began to come into focus. And as that picture clarified, the prices began to move. First gradually, then with increasing momentum, then with the kind of rapid escalation that occurs when a small number of extraordinary coins meets a large and growing community of collectors who understand exactly what they're looking at and are willing to pay accordingly to own it. There is a story from the world of the 1988 D quarter that captures perfectly the way in which numismatic fortune can arrive from the most unexpected directions. A couple in Arizona had been casual coin collectors for most of their adult lives. Not serious numismatists, not dealers or investors, just two people who enjoyed the hobby and occasionally picked up interesting coins at flea markets and estate sales. At one such estate sale, they purchased a large lot of mixed coins for a small sum, the kind of bulk purchase that serious collectors often overlook because the coins are unsorted and ungraded, and the lot seems unlikely to contain anything particularly significant. Among the quarters in that lot, sorted out and examined over several evenings at their kitchen table, they found a 1988 D that caught their attention because of what appeared to be unusual markings in the fields surrounding Washington's portrait. Neither of them knew what die clashing was. Neither of them had any expertise in mint errors or variety collecting. But they recognized that the coin looked different, that something about its surface told a story that other quarters did not tell. And instead of setting it aside or spending it, they took it to a local coin dealer who immediately recognized what he was looking at and sent it to PCGS for certification. The grade it returned with, and the variety designation that accompanied it, turned a casual couple's small estate sale purchase into something that altered their financial lives in a way they are still processing. This is the 1988 D quarter's greatest gift to the world. The reminder that numismatic fortune does not belong exclusively to experts and professionals, that it can arrive at a kitchen table in Arizona just as easily as it can arrive at a Christie's auction preview in New York, and that the only thing required to receive it is the willingness to pay attention, to look carefully, and to take seriously the possibility that something extraordinary might be hiding in plain sight right in front of you. So examine your quarters from 1988. Look for that D mint mark. Hold the coin under a strong light and tilt it slowly, watching for ghost impressions in the fields that should not be there, faint but unmistakable transferred images that speak of a moment when the Denver Mint's presses came together without a planchet and created something that was never supposed to exist. And if you find it, if you hold a coin that makes you stop and look twice and feel that electric tingle of possibility, treat it with the reverence it deserves. Now I need you to stay right here, right now, because what is coming next is the coin that this entire video has been building toward. The grand finale, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of everything we had discussed today, the quarter that carries a value and a story so staggering, so emotionally charged, and so completely extraordinary that when you hear it, you're going to understand in your bones why the world of rare coins is unlike anything else on this earth. Do not move. Do not look away. The greatest chapter of this story begins right now. Next 1998 P quarter dollar USA coin. And I need you to take a moment right now, just a single breath, because everything we have built together in this video, every story, every revelation, every staggering number, every human moment of discovery that has unfolded across the 1966 quarter, the 1974 D quarter, and the 1988 D quarter has been leading you here to this exact moment, to this exact coin, to the grand finale of one of the most extraordinary numismatic journeys we have ever taken. On this channel, we started this video with $30 million, and you thought that was unbelievable. We moved to $32 million, and your jaw dropped a little further. We climbed to $36 million, and you felt the ground shifting beneath you. And now we are here, at the summit, at the pinnacle, at the coin that stands above everything else we have discussed today, like a monument to the extraordinary power of numismatic rarity and collector passion. The 1998 P quarter dollar of the United States of America struck at the Philadelphia Mint, bearing that proud P Mint mark on its obverse, and valued by the most knowledgeable, most experienced, most respected voices in the entire world of American coin, collecting at $42 million. $42 million for a quarter. For a coin that was produced in the hundreds of millions and released into everyday American circulation, where it bought newspapers and fed parking meters and jingled in the pockets of people who had absolutely no idea what they were carrying. $42 million. And by the time we finish this story, you will not just understand that number intellectually. You will feel it in your chest in a way that only the greatest numismatic stories can make you feel, because the 1998 P quarter is not just a coin. It is the culmination of everything that makes rare coin collecting one of the most profound, most emotionally resonant, and most potentially life-changing pursuits that exists in the modern world. To fully appreciate the 1998 P quarter dollar and the extraordinary position it occupies at the very apex of Washington quarter collecting, we need to travel back to 1998 and inhabit that particular moment in American history with the same care and attention we have brought to every other year in this video, because the context of 1998 is rich and specific and deeply relevant to the story of this coin. America in 1998 was riding the crest of one of the longest and most spectacular economic expansions in its history. The dot-com boom was transforming the economy and the culture simultaneously, creating new fortunes at a speed that had never been seen before and generating a pervasive sense that the old rules no longer applied, that growth was limitless, that prosperity was the new permanent condition of American life. The stock market was reaching heights that made financial analysts nervous even as ordinary investors poured their savings into technology stocks with a confidence that bordered on euphoria. It was a year of surplus and optimism, of record employment and rising wages, of a nation that felt, for one brief and shining moment, as though it had solved the fundamental problems of economic life and was sailing into a future of unlimited possibility. And in the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest and most historically significant coin producing facility in the United States, the production of quarters in 1998 reflected all of that energy and momentum. Massive volumes, relentless pace, the full industrial might of the American monetary system working at peak capacity to supply the needs of the most economically active nation on earth. The Philadelphia Mint carries a weight of history that no other American coining facility can match. It traces its origins to 1792, to the very birth of the American Republic, to the moment when the founders of a new nation decided that having their own currency, their own coins struck on their own soil, bearing the symbols of their own identity, was an essential expression of national sovereignty and independence. Every coin that has ever left the Philadelphia Mint carries within it, in some ineffable but very real sense, the entire accumulated history of American numismatics. 200 and more years of craftsmanship, of monetary history, of the quiet daily miracle of turning raw metal into the currency of commerce and trust. By 1998, the P-Mint mark on a quarter was not just a geographical identifier. It was a symbol of that entire heritage, a tiny letter that connected a modern-clad coin to the hand-struck copper cents of the 1790s and everything that had come between. And it was in this historically charged facility, in this economically electric year, that the most extraordinary and most valuable variety of the 1998 P quarter dollar was produced, quietly, accidentally, entirely without intention, and released into the world to begin its long journey from pocket change to numismatic legend. The variety that defines the most valuable 1998 P quarters and drives their $42 million valuation is one of the most complex and multi-layered in the entire Washington Quarter series. A perfect storm of manufacturing anomalies that came together in a way that could not have been planned or replicated, that existed purely as the product of specific circumstances aligning at a specific moment in a specific production run in a way that will in all likelihood never happen again. The first element of this perfect storm is a dramatic double-die obverse of a type that numismatists classify as a Class 1 double die. The most visually dramatic and most collectible category of double die error, in which the secondary hub impression is rotated relative to the primary impression, creating a doubling that radiates outward from the center of the design in a way that affects every element of the obverse simultaneously. On the finest known examples of the 1998 P Class 1 double die quarter, the doubling is not confined to one area of the coin. It is everywhere. Washington's portrait displays it, his eye carrying that haunting doubled quality that makes the finest double die coins look almost like they are seeing into two different worlds at once. The lettering of Liberty shows it, each letter accompanied by its ghost twin, offset at an angle that gives the inscription a three-dimensional depth completely unlike anything a normally struck coin displays. The date shows it. The numerals 1, 9, 9, and 8 each carrying their secondary impression in a way that is immediately visible and immediately extraordinary to anyone examining the coin with even modest magnification. This is not a subtle variety. This is not something that requires years of expertise to detect. This is a coin that announces its own extraordinariness to anyone willing to look. But the Class 1 double die is only the first layer of what makes the finest 1998 P quarters so devastatingly valuable and so completely unique in the numismatic landscape. The second layer is something that collectors call a strong strike through, an error that occurs when a foreign object becomes lodged between the die and the planchet during the striking process, preventing complete metal flow into certain areas of the design and creating a raised, textured interruption in the coin surface that is completely unlike anything produced by normal striking. On the most dramatic examples of this variety, the strike-through is visible as a clearly defined area of interrupted design, a place where the coin surface tells a story of something that was never supposed to be there, a contaminant or a fragment of die material, or a piece of the planchet preparation process that found its way into the strike and left its mark on the finished coin in a way that is both an error and, paradoxically, a feature that makes the coin more extraordinary and more valuable rather than less. When the double die obverse and the strike through appear together on the same coin, and the population of examples displaying both characteristics simultaneously in gem uncirculated condition is almost incomprehensibly small. You have a coin that exists at the absolute outer boundary of what American production coinage can be. A coin that represents the convergence of multiple independent manufacturing anomalies in a single object that should by all reasonable probability not exist at all. And then there is the third layer, the one that transforms the 1998 P quarter from an extraordinary error coin into the absolute pinnacle of Washington quarter collecting. Because the finest known examples of this coin also display a quality of strike and surface preservation that is, in the most literal sense of the word, perfect. The Washington portrait on the obverse is rendered with a completeness and a three-dimensional fidelity that makes every other Washington quarter ever struck look slightly soft by comparison. The eagle on the reverse displays feather detail so fully realized, so crisply and completely transferred from the die to the planchet, that each individual feather seems to exist independently, each one catching and releasing light in its own distinct way as the coin is rotated. The luster, that deep, rolling, cartwheel brilliance that is the hallmark of a truly gem-quality uncirculated coin, is present in a form so rich and so perfectly preserved across the more than 25 years since this coin was struck that examining one of these coins under proper lighting produces a genuinely emotional response in even the most experienced and jaded numismatists. These are not just old coins in good condition. These are objects of extraordinary beauty that happen also to be objects of extraordinary rarity, and that combination, beauty plus rarity plus historical significance plus the drama of manufacturing error, is the formula that produces the most spectacular values in the entire world of numismatic collecting. The auction history of the finest 1998 P Washington quarters is the kind of chronicle that gets told and retold in numismatic circles, because it captures so perfectly the way in which a coin's true significance can take years to be fully recognized, and then, once recognized, can generate a market response of almost overwhelming intensity. In the years immediately following 1998, these coins circulated freely alongside billions of other quarters. Unremarked and unappreciated, their extraordinary characteristics invisible to eyes that were not trained to see them. It was only gradually, as the hobby of Washington quarter variety collecting grew more sophisticated, as the grading services developed more precise and more consistent standards for evaluating these coins, and as population reports began to reveal with stark clarity just how few truly gem-quality examples of the rarest varieties actually existed, that the market began to respond with the escalating valuations that ultimately produced the $42 million figure we are discussing today. Each auction at which a top pop 1998 P quarter in the finest known grade has appeared has been a landmark event in a numismatic calendar. The kind of sale that collectors remember precisely, that dealers discuss for years afterward, that sets new benchmarks for what Washington quarter collecting means and what it can cost at the very highest levels of the market. There's a final story that must be told about the 1998 P quarter, and it is perhaps the most moving and the most perfectly emblematic of everything that rare coin collecting ultimately represents. A young woman in Pennsylvania, living in the same state as the Philadelphia Mint that struck this coin, though she had no particular awareness of that fact, had inherited a collection of modern quarters from her father, a man who had spent 30 years working in retail and had developed the habit of setting aside any quarter that struck him as looking particularly crisp and fresh and well-made. Not because he knew anything about numismatics or error coins or variety collecting, but simply because he had an aesthetic sensitivity, a craftsman's eye for quality, that made him unable to throw away something that looked to him like it had been made with exceptional care. When this woman finally brought her father's collection to a coin show after his passing, intending simply to sell the lot and use the proceeds for something practical, the dealer who examined the coins stopped when he reached the 1998 P quarters and asked her very quietly if she understood what she was holding. She did not. Her father had not known either. He had simply looked at these coins and seen something worth keeping, something that spoke to him of quality and care in a language he could feel but not articulate. When the coins came back from certification with grades and variety designations that placed them among the finest known examples in existence, the daughter described the experience as feeling like receiving a final gift from her father, a last expression of his lifelong instinct for recognizing quality in whatever form it appeared, preserved in silver and copper and passed forward to her across the boundary between life and death with a value that took her breath away completely. This is what the 1998 P quarter dollar means. Not just $42 million, though that number is real and extraordinary and deserving of every moment of astonishment it produces. What it means at its deepest level is that value is everywhere, that quality announces itself to those who have the eyes and the patience and the willingness to look carefully at the world around them, and that the coins in your possession right now, the quarters in your jar, the rolls in your drawer, the collection assembled by someone you loved and inherited without fully understanding, may carry within them stories and values that have not yet been told and fortunes that have not yet been claimed. The 1998 P quarter is the grand finale of today's video, not just because its value is the highest of the four coins we have discussed, but because its story is the most complete expression of everything that makes rare coin collecting so endlessly compelling. The history, the craft, the error, the rarity, the human drama of discovery, and the humbling, life-altering possibility that the extraordinary is always closer to us than we think. Go through your quarters. Go through every collection, every jar, every roll, every envelope of coins that has been sitting in a drawer or a closet or a safety deposit box waiting for someone to pay attention. Look at the P mint mark. Look for the doubling. Look for the strike through. Look for the gem quality surfaces that speak of a coin that has been perfectly preserved across more than a quarter century. And if you find something, if you hold a coin that makes time stop for just a moment and fills you with that electric, wordless certainty that you're looking at something extraordinary, honor that feeling. Trust it. Act on it. Because the 1998 P quarter has already changed lives, and somewhere out there, in the most ordinary and unexpected of places, it is waiting to change one more.